Mom and Dad said, "You've ruined our lives. You're a burden." So, I smiled and walked away.
Later, they sent a message saying, "Don't come back." I replied, "Okay, I just stopped paying your bills."
My phone exploded with notifications.
I read the message twice, just to ensure I wasn't imagining it. Never come back.
It was almost funny, almost.
After everything I had done for them, the rent payments, the credit card bills, the medical expenses they always forgot to handle, they had the nerve to act like I was the problem, like I was the burden. A slow grin spread across my face as I typed my response, "Okay, your bills are now yours." I hit send and exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Then my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. My parents started calling nonstop, one after another, sometimes both trying to reach me simultaneously.
Texts flooded in so fast that the notification bar couldn't keep up.
I didn't even bother to open them. I knew what they'd say. "Wait, let's talk."
"You're overreacting. Don't be immature."
I let the phone buzz on the table and leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes.
This was it. This was the moment I had been too scared to take for years. And it felt incredible. I didn't just cut them off financially. Oh no, that would have been too easy. If they wanted me gone, I would make sure they felt what my absence truly meant. It was time to teach them a lesson.
The buzzing didn't stop. It was a constant, angry vibration on the table, as if my phone itself was having a breakdown. I picked it up and scrolled through the messages, skimming past the desperate ones. "You can't be serious.
You're acting like a child. How could you do this to us? Pick up the phone right now." I smirked and put my phone down. Let them sweat. First, I logged into my banking app and canceled every single auto payment linked to their accounts. Rent? Gone. Utilities? Nope. Credit cards? Frozen. Their Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime? Cancelled.
If they thought I was bluffing, they were in for a very rude awakening.
Next, I logged into the electric and water company websites.
I wasn't just stopping payments, I was closing the accounts.
Everything was in my name, so it wasn't hard.
Let's see how they enjoy a house with no power or running water.
Still, I wasn't done. Their internet and cable provider? A few clicks, and it was disconnected.
I imagined my parents trying to turn on their favorite shows, only to be met with a black screen.
I chuckled. Then came the final nail in the coffin, their landlord.
I had been paying their rent directly for years. So, I called the property manager.
"Hi, this is Alex Carter. I just wanted to give you a heads up that I won't be covering the rent for 304 Ridgeway anymore. The tenants will need to handle payments themselves starting this month."
There was a brief silence on the other end before the landlord said, "Wait, your parents?"
"Yep. Do they know this?"
"They will soon," I said and hung up. By now, my phone had stopped buzzing.
The silence was almost eerie, but I knew better.
They weren't done, they were just regrouping.
Sure enough, 10 minutes later, my screen lit up with an incoming call. My mother. I stared at it for a second.
Then, for the first time in my life, I picked up not out of obligation, but out of curiosity.
Her voice came through immediately, high-pitched and frantic. "Alex, what are you doing? The electricity just got shut off."
I called the company, and they said the account was closed. I stayed silent, letting her spiral. I tried paying rent, and they said no payment is scheduled.
"Alex, this isn't funny. Fix this." I took a deep breath and leaned back. "No." Silence. Then a screech. "What do you mean, no?"
I almost laughed at how quickly her voice shifted from panic to fury.
"I mean no," I repeated calmly. "You told me to never come back. So I'm done. Everything was in my name, and now I'm taking it back." "This is different," she snapped. "You can't just leave us like this." "Oh, I can. And I have," I said.
She tried switching tactics.
"We didn't mean it, Alex. You're twisting our words." You know we love you. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Because never come back sounds pretty clear to me.
That was, she fumbled, scrambling for an excuse. That was just your father was upset.
You know how he gets. He didn't mean it. And what about you? I asked. You texted me what to do?
I think they're scared.
I smirked. Good.
Alex, I'm serious, she snapped.
They don't have rent money.
They don't have groceries.
Mom is crying. She keeps saying, you're being cruel. I laughed. Cruel? Cruel is spending years sucking the life out of someone and never once saying thank you.
Cruel is calling me a burden after I paid their bills every month.
Cruel is acting like I owe them something when they've done nothing but take. She hesitated.
I mean, yeah, I get that, but you can't just cut them off completely.
They're our parents. I sighed. You still don't get it, do you? This isn't me cutting them off. This is me giving them exactly what they wanted. They said I was a burden. Great. Now they don't have to deal with me anymore. Silence. Then, in a small voice, she said, You're really not coming back, are you? No, I said. And neither is my money. Then I hung up.
For the first time in my life, I was free. The silence after hanging up on my sister felt different, not like before when cutting them off had been an idea, a theory. No, this was real.
It was happening.
I had burned the bridge, and I wasn't looking back. That night, as I sat in my apartment with a drink in hand, I imagined what was unfolding at their house. My mother pacing the floor, clutching her phone, sending frantic messages that would never be answered. My father, red-faced, trying and failing to make a call on his now disconnected phone, cursing under his breath when the Wi-Fi cut out.
The fridge getting emptier, the landlord knocking. The realization that no money was coming. For once, they were the ones struggling. I slept better that night than I had in years. By the next morning, my phone was eerily quiet. No calls, no texts. They had finally realized I wasn't going to save them. I logged into my email, sipping my coffee, and found something that made me chuckle, a message from their landlord. Hey Alex, just checking in. Your parents haven't paid rent this month. I tried reaching out, but they're not responding. Any idea what's going on? I stared at the email for a moment, then typed a quick reply, not my responsibility anymore. They'll need to figure it out. Good luck. I hit send and leaned back, picturing my parents' faces when the eviction notice arrived. They were out of options, and I wasn't coming back. By midday, the silence was broken. I was at work when my phone vibrated with an unknown number. I usually ignored those, but something told me to pick up. Hello? At first, there was just heavy breathing. Then my father's voice, but this time it was different, not the usual smug, commanding tone he always used with me. No, this was something else. Something desperate. Alex, he said, his voice tight. Listen, we need to talk. I smirked, already knowing where this was going. About what? This situation, he stammered. Things are getting complicated. Oh, I bet, I leaned back in my chair. I thought you didn't need me. I thought I was a burden. There was silence on the other end. Then he sighed. We said things we didn't mean. There it was, the backpedaling. The same people who had told me to never come back, who had mocked me for carrying them all these years, were suddenly realizing just how much they had relied on me. I decided to play along. Oh, so now you didn't mean it? We were angry, he said, his tone growing defensive. But that doesn't mean you just abandoned your family. That word, abandon, sent a spark of irritation through me. You mean like how you abandoned me every time I needed something? I shot back. Like when I was struggling, but you still took my money without hesitation? Like when you told me to never come back? He hesitated, and I could picture him grinding his teeth, hating that he had to grovel. Look, your mother is upset, he finally said. She's been crying for days. She's not doing well. I almost laughed. The guilt trip classic. And what exactly do you want me to do about that? Another pause.
Then the real reason for the call, we need help with the rent, he admitted, voice low.
And the bills. Things have gotten complicated. And I cut him off. That's not my problem.
Alex, be reasonable, he snapped, his frustration finally showing.
You can't just cut us off like this. We raised you.
I felt a strange calm wash over me.
No, Grandma back. Where are they supposed to go?
His response came a minute later, not my problem. But if they don't clear out by next Friday, I'm calling the sheriff.
I smirked. Perfect. The next evening, my sister called. I picked up this time.
Her voice was different, quieter, like all the fight had been drained out of her.
Alex, you win. Okay, I said. They're losing the house. They have nothing. Are you happy now?
I took a slow breath. I didn't win, I said calmly.
They just finally faced the consequences of their own actions. She scoffed. You could fix this, you know. Just one payment. That's all it would take. I almost laughed. One payment? That's how she saw it? Like I was some genie who could magically make their problems disappear? They made their choice, I said. Now they get to live with it.
They are parents, she snapped, but her voice cracked. She didn't even believe her own words anymore. They were never parents to me, I said flatly.
I was just their wallet.
There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing, could hear the wheels turning in her head. For the first time, she couldn't argue.
Then, in a barely audible voice, she whispered, "Where are they supposed to go?" I shrugged. Not my problem. And for once, I meant it. By the time their eviction date arrived, my parents had finally reached their breaking point.
I got one last voicemail from my mother, her voice shaky and broken.
Alex, please. We don't have anywhere to go. I don't know what we're going to do. Just call me, please. I listened to it twice.
Then, with zero hesitation, I deleted it.
They had thrown me away. Now I was finally throwing them away too, and it felt amazing.
The day after the eviction, I got another unexpected message, this time from my cousin Melissa.
Hey, just thought you'd want to know.
Your parents are staying at a motel outside town.
They're broke.
Mom said they asked her for money, but she refused.
Looks like nobody's bailing them out this time. I read the message twice, then set my phone down. It was actually happening. They were out of options.
No cozy house, no credit cards, no endless stream of my money keeping them afloat. For the first time in their lives, they had to fend for themselves.
And not a single part of me wanted to save them. Later that night, I got another call, this time from a number I didn't recognize. I debated ignoring it but picked up out of sheer curiosity. A weak voice crackled through the speaker. Alex, my mother breathed. Please, just talk to me. I stayed silent. She sniffled, then let out a broken laugh. We lost everything. I almost rolled my eyes. No, Mom. You didn't lose everything. You just lost me. We don't have anywhere to go, she continued. Your father, he's not handling it well.
He keeps saying it's not his fault, but she trailed off, her voice catching.
I waited.
Then, barely above a whisper, she said, I know we did wrong by you.
That made me pause. A confession. After all this time, I gripped the phone, waiting to hear what she'd say next.
I know we took advantage, she admitted, her voice thick with emotion.
I never thought you'd actually leave us like this. I exhaled slowly.
This was it, the moment where most people would cave, where I was supposed to hear my mother's tears, feel guilty, and swoop in to rescue them. But I felt nothing, no guilt, no sympathy, just peace. For years, they had drained me dry of money, of love, of patience. And now they wanted to apologize only because they had lost. I took a deep breath and finally spoke.
I meant what I said. Silence.
I continued, my voice calm and steady.
You wanted me out of your life. Now you got your wish. Alex, please. No, I said simply. We're done. And before she could say another word, I hung up.
Then, with a small smile, I blocked her number. For the first time in my life, I was free. Days passed, then weeks, and nothing happened. No more desperate calls, no more guilt trips, no more messages begging for help.
They had finally given up.
For the first time in years, my money was mine.
My time was mine. My life was mine. Mine.
I found myself smiling more, sleeping better, enjoying the little things. Without them, everything felt lighter.
One afternoon, I sat on my balcony with a coffee, watching the sunset.
My phone buzzed, a message from Melissa.
Just so you know, your parents moved in with some distant relatives. Guess they finally figured something out.
I smirked, took a sip of coffee, and typed back, good for them. Then, without a second thought, I put my phone away and enjoyed the view.
6 months passed since I'd heard anything substantial about my parents.
Life had taken on a pleasant rhythm without their constant demands. My bank account grew steadily, I'd been promoted at work, something that wouldn't have happened if I was still working overtime to pay for their lifestyle. I'd moved to a nicer apartment, started dating again, and even picked up rock climbing.
For the first time, I was building a life for myself rather than propping up someone else's. My sister had stopped calling too.
After our last conversation, she'd sent a few half-hearted texts, but the guilt trips had gradually faded. Maybe she'd finally accepted my decision, or maybe they'd found someone else to leech from.
Either way, the silence was blissful until a Wednesday afternoon in October.
I was sorting through my mail when I spotted an envelope with unfamiliar handwriting.
No return address.
I almost tossed it with the junk mail, but something made me open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a newspaper clipping from the obituary section. My heart stopped when I saw my father's name, Thomas Carter, 58, passed away suddenly on October 12 from complications following a heart attack.
He is survived by his wife, Linda, and their children. My name wasn't listed.
I stared at the paper, waiting for some emotion to hit, grief, guilt, relief, anything.
But all I felt was numb. I checked the date. The funeral was tomorrow. I set the clipping down and walked to my balcony, staring out at the skyline as the sun set. My father was dead, and I hadn't known, hadn't been told. Just a clipping sent anonymously, probably by my aunt or cousin, the only ones who still acknowledged my existence. That night, I barely slept, not from grief, but from the unsettling feeling that even this, my father's death, would somehow become my responsibility to fix. Morning came, and I called in sick to work. Then I sat in my living room, staring at the obituary, debating whether to go to the funeral or stay away. The thought of seeing my mother playing the grieving widow while eyeing potential new sources of income made my stomach turn, but something pulled at me, not obligation or guilt, but curiosity, maybe closure. At 2 p.m., dressed in a dark suit, I walked into the back of the small funeral home. There were maybe 20 people scattered among the pews, colleagues from my father's contracting jobs, a few distant relatives, my sister sitting in the front row beside my mother. No one noticed me at first. I stood at the back, listening to generic platitudes about a man no one really knew. Hard worker, they said. Family man. I almost laughed.
Then my mother spotted me.
Even from across the room, I could see the moment of shock quickly replaced by something calculating. She whispered to my sister, who turned around, eyes widening. I didn't approach them.
When the service ended, I stayed put, watching my mother accept tearful condolences, her face a perfect mask of grief.
Always the performer.
As people filtered out, she made her way toward me, arms extended as if for a hug. I remained still, hands in my pockets. "Ethan," she said, her voice cracking in a way that might have convinced me once.
"You came." "I did. I wasn't sure you'd." "I almost didn't."
Her eyes, red-rimmed but dry, studied me carefully.
"He would have wanted you here." No, I said quietly. He wouldn't.
She flinched, then rallied. Ethan, whatever happened between us, he was still your father.
Was he? I kept my voice neutral.
When a flicker of genuine anger crossed her face before the mask slipped back into place, she glanced around, clearly concerned about appearances.
Can we talk somewhere private, please? Against my better judgment, I followed her to a small side room.
As soon as the door closed, her shoulders slumped. The performance briefly paused.
How did you find out? She asked. Someone sent me the obituary. Anonymous. She nodded slowly. I wanted to call you, but. But what? You needed my number? My address? Or were you afraid I wouldn't pay for the funeral? Her silence was answer enough. Let me guess, I continued. Insurance lapsed? No savings? Cremation costs adding up? Doorbell rang on a Sunday morning. I wasn't expecting anyone.
Through the peephole, I saw my sister looking uncomfortable in the hallway.
Curious, I opened the door.
Hey, she said, fidgeting with her purse strap.
Can I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside.
She entered cautiously, looking around my apartment with wide eyes.
Nice place. Thanks, I replied, gesturing to the couch. Have a seat. Want coffee? She nodded, still standing awkwardly. Sure.
I busied myself in the kitchen, giving both of us a moment. When I returned with 2 mugs, she had finally sat down, perched on the edge of the couch like she might bolt at any moment. So, I said, taking the chair opposite her.
What brings you here?
She took a sip of coffee, buying time.
I've been thinking a lot since Dad died. I waited. About how they treated you. How we all treated you.
She set her mug down carefully.
I didn't get it before. I thought you were being cruel, cutting them off. But now Mom moved in with me last week. She laughed without humor. Aunt Kathy couldn't handle her anymore. And I'm starting to understand what you were dealing with. I raised an eyebrow. Already?
She's burned through Dad's social security already, maxed out my credit card, tells everyone I'm not doing enough.
She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. How did you do it for so long? I didn't know any different, I said. Honestly, she nodded slowly. I think I owe you an apology.
I took a sip of my coffee, considering.
You don't owe me anything. No, I do. I should have seen what was happening. Should have helped. You were just as much their child as I was. But I wasn't the one paying their bills. She sighed. Look, I'm not here to ask for money. I needed to tell you that you were right. And I'm sorry I didn't understand sooner.
For the first time in years, I felt a genuine connection with my sister, not the forced family bond our parents had weaponized, but something real, something honest.
Thank you, I said simply.
She smiled faintly, then grew serious again.
I do have one question, though. What's that? How did you do it? Cut them off completely? I'm drowning after 2 weeks.
I leaned back in my chair, considering. I realized something important: they were never going to change. The only thing I could control was my response.
So you just walked away?
I gave them exactly what they claimed they wanted: a life without their burden of a son.
She nodded slowly. I'm not sure I have your strength. It's not about strength. It's about survival.
We talked for another hour, really talked, maybe for the first time ever, about our childhood, about the manipulation, about how we'd both been pitted against each other for our parents' approval.
When she finally stood to leave, something had shifted between us. Not forgiveness, exactly, but understanding. I should get back, she said. Mom will be wondering where I am. I walked her to the door. Remember what I said, you don't owe her anything.
I know, but she struggled for words.
She's still our mother. That's biology, not obligation.
She nodded, though I wasn't sure she fully believed it yet. She'd have to find her own path, just as I had.
Take care of yourself, Sarah, I said. Call me if you need to talk.
After she left, I returned to my balcony, watching the city below, feeling strangely peaceful.
My father was gone. My mother was someone else's problem now.
And maybe, just maybe, my sister and I could build something new from the wreckage of our shared past. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister. She asked if I saw Mom and if I'd help with the bills.
I said, no. I smiled. Proud of you. Another buzz.
It's hard, I know, but it gets easier. The next morning, I woke to another text sent at 3 a.m. She's moving out tomorrow. I told her I can't support her anymore. I read it twice, feeling a complex mix of emotions: pride, concern, hope.
Where will she go? I texted back.
The response came an hour later. Cousin Melissa offered her the spare room.
Temporary, I think. Everyone's finally setting boundaries.
I stared at my phone, a weight lifting that I hadn't realized I was still carrying.